It began, as such things often do, not with an alarm, but with a whisper. In the high latitudes where ice and silence rule, a quiet shift was taking place, barely noticeable on the surface. Deep below the tundra and far above the clouds, Earth was stirring, not with fury, but with a strange coordination. As if multiple hidden systems were speaking to one another in a language science hadn't yet learned to translate. For decades, climate science stood on solid ground, or so we thought. Models were refined, predictions sharpened, policies drafted in confidence that we understood the fundamentals: temperature, carbon, oceanic flow, and magnetic shielding. But now that foundation trembles, not from the force of one disruption, but from a cascade. 10 environmental anomalies, each inexplicable on its own, yet whispering a pattern when viewed together. In the Arctic, Earth's magnetic North Pole is sprinting toward Siberia at unprecedented speeds, nearly 50 meters per year, forcing emergency updates to the very systems modern life depends on: navigation satellites, aircraft autopilots, even military targeting systems. It's not just a polar wander, it's a disruption in planetary magnetism, and it's not behaving like anything recorded in the geological past. Thousands of miles away, deserts where rain should never fall are being invaded by atmospheric rivers, narrow bands of sky-borne moisture that defy physics. Carrying more water than the Amazon, they sweep over the Sahara and other arid lands, raining down in volumes that suggest a moisture source science cannot trace. These rivers hold more than water. They carry questions about the limits of hydrodynamics and the unknown mechanisms fueling their journey. Meanwhile, the Gulf Stream, Earth's great conveyor belt of heat, is rebelling. Entire segments are reversing direction, flowing contrary to the principles of oceanography. Eddies the size of small nations appear and vanish without warning. Warm water maintains its temperature as it flows in the wrong direction, violating thermodynamic expectations. Fish long confined to tropical waters are suddenly found off the cold coasts of New England. The ocean, like the atmosphere, is no longer playing by the rules. In the frozen soil of the Arctic, permafrost should be melting steadily with global warming. Instead, it's behaving schizophrenically, melting and expanding simultaneously. Some zones are cooling faster than others are heating. Methane, the potent greenhouse gas, is being released in some areas and absorbed in others. Ground temperatures fluctuate in ways that contradict our understanding of heat transfer, as if unseen hands are at work below the surface. High above, in the thin upper layers of the atmosphere, the ionosphere crackles with unexplained energy. Electrical activity appears without solar input. Charges build where they shouldn't exist, creating distortions in radio communication and navigation. Plasma forms geometric patterns in the sky, persisting far longer than turbulence should allow. These aren't just anomalies, they're behaviors science cannot yet decode. Gravity itself, long considered immutable, is showing signs of inconsistency. In localized zones across the planet, gravity fluctuates by margins that should require underground mass shifts equivalent to mountain ranges, yet seismic monitors detect nothing. Atomic clocks in these regions tick differently, hinting at space-time warping in ways general relativity doesn't predict. And then there are the storms, lightning from clear skies, massive electrical discharges in bone-dry air. Ground currents persist long after the strikes, as though the atmosphere has become a battery, storing and discharging energy in patterns more technological than meteorological. These aren't just separate curiosities. They are pulses from a planet in the midst of something larger. Across each domain, magnetism, weather, ocean, earth, sky, the laws we thought governed the natural world are being bent, or perhaps revealed as incomplete. This is a story not about disaster, but about humility, about our need to listen more closely to the Earth's deeper rhythms, to question what we thought was settled, and to accept that we are only beginning to glimpse the true complexity of the planet we call home. What if these aren't failures of our models, but signs that a new understanding is required? What if the planet isn't breaking down, but transforming in ways we don't yet comprehend? Welcome to the Edge of Knowledge. Welcome to a story of 10 anomalies and a world in flux. It began as a slow drift, a quiet, almost imperceptible movement of Earth's magnetic north. For centuries, it had wandered gently across the Canadian Arctic as if tethered by invisible strings. But around the year 2000, the pole broke from its habitual path, accelerating toward Siberia with alarming urgency. Today, it races at nearly 50 meters per year. That's 4 times faster than anything in the historical record. The shift is so dramatic that the world magnetic model, used by GPS satellites, aircraft, and even submarines, now requires emergency updates every 12 to 18 months, far more frequent than the 5-year intervals once deemed sufficient. This isn't just a navigational inconvenience, it's a foundational crisis. Earth's magnetic field, once thought to be governed by slow, predictable processes within the molten core, is behaving erratically. What was once a geological constant has become a moving target, and the consequences reach far beyond compass bearings. Dr. William Brown of the British Geological Survey calls it unprecedented. Across the globe, the magnetic field isn't just moving. It's weakening in one hemisphere while strengthening in another. The South Atlantic anomaly is losing field strength by 5% per decade, while the region above Siberia grows magnetically stronger. It's as if Earth's inner dynamo is rewiring itself. Even more startling is that both magnetic poles, the north and the south, are accelerating in opposite directions. This synchronized sprint has no precedent in geological records. It's not a simple pole flip, nor is it a gradual drift. It's a fundamental reordering of the magnetic shield that protects Earth from solar radiation. The ripple effects are already measurable. Migratory species like Arctic terns, which rely on magnetic cues to navigate tens of thousands of miles, are arriving hundreds of miles off course. Whale strandings have spiked in regions of magnetic flux. These aren't random tragedies, they are signs of ecological systems losing their compass. Satellite data from the European Space Agency's SWARM mission has revealed another mystery. Magnetic pulses, or jerks, emerging from deep within Earth, over a mile beneath the surface. These pulses appear every 6 to 8 months, pulsing with a rhythm too regular to be random, yet with origins unknown. They suggest that the core of the Earth is sending signals through the magnetic field, messages we don't yet know how to interpret. Even seismic activity appears to be shifting along fault lines that align with magnetic anomalies. Earthquakes are no longer following tectonic patterns alone. They are clustering in regions of electromagnetic change, hinting at a hidden connection between Earth's magnetic and geological systems. Pilots flying over northern Canada and Siberia report discrepancies of up to 20 degrees between their magnetic compasses and GPS coordinates. The Federal Aviation Administration has issued warnings for these regions. When guidance systems disagree, lives hang in the balance. But perhaps the greatest concern is the one we can't see: radiation. Earth's magnetic field shields the planet from solar flares and cosmic rays. As the field weakens and reorganizes, it creates gaps, windows through which radiation can slip. Some models suggest this could alter atmospheric chemistry, thinning the ozone or disrupting electrical properties in the upper atmosphere. What does it mean when the planet's magnetic heartbeat grows erratic? Are we witnessing the early stages of a pole reversal or something else entirely? For now, there is no clear answer, only this: our world is not as stable as we believed, and beneath our feet, deep in the molten iron heart of Earth, change is unfolding at a pace no model anticipated. The compass needle still points north, but where it leads tomorrow is anyone's guess. Imagine standing in the heart of the Sahara, a place where rain is a myth and the sky stretches dry and cloudless for thousands of miles. Now imagine, above your head, a river, wide as a highway, invisible to the eye, but carrying more water than the Mississippi, winding across the desert sky. This isn't fiction. It's an atmospheric anomaly that defies every law we thought governed weather. These are atmospheric rivers, long, narrow corridors of concentrated water vapor once thought to form only over oceans. But now they're appearing over landlocked regions, dry expanses that should be meteorologically incapable of hosting such phenomena. In 2023, satellites captured one such river sweeping over the central Sahara, delivering a deluge equivalent to 20 Mississippis worth of moisture. That alone should be impossible. Dr. Marty Ralph from UC San Diego has spent decades studying weather extremes. He calls these events impossible, not out of poetic flair, but because atmospheric rivers require ocean moisture and specific wind patterns to form. Over a desert, they shouldn't exist. Yet they do, and they don't just form, they persist, maintain structure, and strengthen as they move inland. Satellite data shows these rivers surviving 1,000-mile journeys across terrain that should tear them apart. According to thermodynamics, the vapor should condense and rain out or evaporate under high temperatures, but it doesn't. Instead, these sky rivers appear to defy evaporation, gain energy, and release torrents of rain in places where no such rainfall has been recorded in centuries. Some desert regions received over 6 inches of rain in a single day, enough to reshape the landscape and flood ancient dunes. Atmospheric physicists are stunned. Measurements show these rivers holding moisture levels that exceed theoretical limits. The air simply shouldn't be able to contain that much vapor at those temperatures and pressures. The Clausius-Clapeyron relation, the basic law governing water vapor saturation, breaks down. Even more strange are the isotopic signatures in the rainwater. Chemical analysis reveals water that hasn't cycled through Earth's known systems. Its isotopes don't match oceanic or terrestrial sources. It's as if the water originated from a reservoir untouched by modern climate cycles. And then there's the electricity. Radar has revealed electromagnetic patterns in these atmospheric rivers that don't resemble any known weather system. The lightning within them doesn't behave like storm lightning. The pulses are too regular, the frequencies too precise. Some scientists have likened them to signals, an eerie parallel to technology more than nature. Pressure readings inside these rivers show gradients that shouldn't be possible without artificial support. It's as if some force is holding the river aloft, guiding its path, injecting energy where none should exist. Even more unsettling is their timing. These anomalies often appear within 24 to 48 hours of heightened solar activity. Solar flares seem to precede their formation, suggesting a possible link between solar electromagnetic bursts and terrestrial moisture behavior. But how? No current model explains it. These impossible rivers raise questions that strike at the heart of meteorology. If water can appear where it shouldn't, held aloft by unknown forces, what else don't we understand about our atmosphere? Are there new, unrecognized inputs shaping our weather? Or are we witnessing a breakdown of the systems we once believed immutable? In the end, the rain falls, the river dissipates, and the desert is left soaked and silent, as if it too is pondering what just happened. Where did that water come from? And more hauntingly, what other forces are shaping the skies above us, unseen, unexplained, and unaccounted for? It moves like a serpent in the sea, vast, ancient, dependable. The Gulf Stream has long been Earth's great oceanic engine, circulating warmth from the tropics to the North Atlantic, shaping climate patterns and sustaining marine life along its path. For generations, it has flowed with a rhythm so stable, scientists used it as a baseline in climate models. But now, the serpent is twisting. Since 2019, portions of the Gulf Stream have begun reversing direction, flowing south instead of north, spinning massive eddies hundreds of kilometers wide that shouldn't exist. These reversals last for months, defying every known law of ocean circulation. The current is no longer a steady stream. It is a patchwork of chaos. Dr. Stefan Rahmstorf, an oceanographer from the Potsdam Institute, describes it as anomalous beyond explanation. The physics that drive this current, temperature gradients, salinity differences, Coriolis forces, haven't changed significantly. And yet, segments of the Gulf Stream are behaving as if the rules no longer apply. Even more baffling, these reversed flows are not losing their heat. Normally, warm water pushed southward should cool, but temperature measurements show otherwise. The warm water maintains its energy, suggesting thermal dynamics are being suspended or bypassed. It's as though something unseen is preserving the heat, overriding entropy itself. These anomalies are not just theoretical. Tropical fish, once confined to warm Caribbean waters, are appearing off the coasts of Maine and Nova Scotia. Coral species from southern reefs are being found hundreds of miles north of their natural habitats. Marine ecosystems are shifting faster than species can adapt. And it's not just biology that's being disrupted. Satellite altimetry, measurements of sea surface height, shows fluctuations that do not align with tides, wind, or atmospheric pressure systems. In some regions, the ocean's surface is rising and falling by meters within days, with no identifiable cause. The implication: gravitational or pressure forces are acting in new, unknown ways. At depths of 3,000 meters, where silence and stability were once assumed, Argo floats now detect synchronized changes matching those on the surface. Temperature and salinity profiles are shifting together, suggesting that some force is affecting the entire vertical structure of the ocean, not just the top layers. Oceanographers are left staring at data that makes no sense. Current velocities measured by acoustic Doppler profilers exceed what known energy sources can generate. These underwater jets of water move as if powered by a force beyond wind, beyond heat, beyond the gravitational pull of the moon. Even more unnerving is the timing. These current reversals often follow intense solar activity, geomagnetic storms, solar flares, and bursts of cosmic radiation. Within 12 to 36 hours, changes begin to ripple through the ocean. Could it be that electromagnetic fields are influencing the deep sea? Could sunlight and magnetism be stirring ancient currents in new ways? And yet, marine life seems to sense it first. Before instruments detect a reversal, plankton communities shift. The smallest organisms on Earth's food chain respond days ahead of the flow. It's as if life itself is more attuned to Earth's hidden rhythms than our technology. If the Gulf Stream, this mighty ancient conveyor of climate, can break its pattern so thoroughly, what else might follow? And deeper still, what unknown clockwork lies beneath the waves, ticking in silence, reshaping the engine room of Earth's climate? We thought the ocean obeyed the rules, but perhaps the ocean was never just water. Perhaps it is memory, energy, and motion woven into something far stranger than we've ever dared to imagine. In the stillness of the Arctic, where time seems frozen and silence stretches for miles, something strange is happening beneath the frost. The ground, once thought to be locked in a slow and predictable thaw, is misbehaving. Permafrost, Earth's ancient cryogenic vault, is melting, yes. But in other places it's growing, expanding, cooling, defying logic. The paradox is unnerving. Within the same region, within the same borehole, scientists are measuring simultaneous warming and cooling. Surface layers soften and collapse, releasing greenhouse gases. But deeper down, the soil cools by the same measure. It's not a simple uptrend or downtrend, it's inversion, like heat flowing the wrong way. Dr. Vladimir Romanovsky from the University of Alaska Fairbanks describes these changes as impossible within current thermal models. Instruments show temperature shifts of 10 to 15 degrees occurring within days, rates that soil, with its known thermal inertia, should not be able to support. It's as if energy is entering and exiting the ground with surgical precision, bypassing the natural rules of heat transfer. What's causing it? Satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar reveal permafrost boundaries migrating unpredictably. Entire swaths of frozen Earth shift laterally by tens of meters within 24 hours, independent of surface weather, sunlight, or soil composition. These movements suggest some unknown force is directing energy deep into the Earth or pulling it out. And then there's the methane. In some regions, permafrost is burping out methane in quantities 100 times greater than previously recorded. In others, it's doing the opposite, absorbing atmospheric gases like CO2 and nitrous oxide, effectively breathing in ways no model predicts. These pockets of chemical contradiction occur just meters apart, creating a checkerboard of environmental behavior that challenges the very structure of climate chemistry. Core samples bring even more confusion. Carbon dating is returning results that defy geological order. Surface materials appear thousands of years older than layers beneath them, violating everything we know about radioactive decay. Organic matter in the same sample is both decomposing rapidly and stabilizing at the same time. It's as if the arrow of time itself is bending in the frozen Earth. Infrared thermal scans taken from orbit don't match ground-level readings. Satellites see heat where sensors feel cold. It's a mismatch that persists across thousands of square kilometers. Either our instruments are wrong, or the rules are changing. Seismic activity adds another layer of mystery. Sensitive accelerometers have detected microquakes linked not to tectonic shifts, but to changes in frozen ground structure. The permafrost is groaning, cracking, reforming, faster than thermal expansion should allow. These are not gradual changes, but mechanical alterations that point to a dynamic frozen world we barely understand. Perhaps most unsettling of all are the electrical signatures. Electromagnetic surveys reveal conductivity patterns that fluctuate independently of moisture or temperature. In certain zones, the frozen ground behaves more like a semiconductor than soil. The implications are profound. The permafrost is not just passive. It's active, reactive, maybe even responsive to forces we haven't yet identified. We once thought of permafrost as a ticking time bomb, melting slowly under global warming's touch. But what if it's something else? What if it's not just reacting to climate, but participating in a deeper, hidden system of planetary balance, or imbalance? Beneath the ice, there is movement, memory, energy, a system that pulses without our permission, that expands and contracts not by temperature alone, but by rules that remain unwritten. What sleeps beneath the frost? And when it wakes, will we understand what it's trying to say? Or will we realize that the Earth has long been whispering, only we never knew how to listen? High above us, where the sky thins into the silence of space, a veil of charged particles forms the invisible boundary between Earth and the cosmos. This is the ionosphere, a region long thought to be understood, stable in its role as protector and conduit for radio waves, satellite signals, and atmospheric electricity. But lately, the ionosphere is behaving like something alive. Dr. Jeffrey Forbes at the University of Colorado has recorded electrical activity in this layer that surpasses anything solar radiation alone could produce. During periods of calm sunspot activity, when the ionosphere should be quiet, it instead bursts with energy thousands of times stronger than expected. The energy has no traceable source. It appears spontaneously, as if the sky itself were generating power from within. Measurements using low-frequency radio transmitters show strange distortions. Phase shifts, amplitude jumps, and delays that don't correlate with solar storms, geomagnetic activity, or known atmospheric conditions. The data breaks from pattern. The rules no longer hold. Then came the shapes. High-frequency radar systems began detecting plasma formations, geometric, organized, and persistent. Triangles, hexagons, grids. These were not the chaotic swirls of auroras or turbulence. These were structures, ordered and stable, maintaining coherence despite wind shears and thermal gradients that should tear them apart within minutes. Some scientists quietly refer to them as ghost circuits, though they hesitate to speculate publicly. After all, nature isn't supposed to draw perfect shapes with plasma. And the temperature? That may be the strangest part. Radar scans show ionospheric regions heating to 2,000 or even 3,000 Kelvin during periods of solar quiet, levels far beyond what chemical or electrical processes can explain. Where is this heat coming from? There are no known reactions capable of producing it in such isolated pockets. The entire global electrical circuit is being thrown off balance. The potential difference between the ionosphere and the Earth's surface, normally around 250,000 volts, has doubled in some regions. Lightning patterns on the ground are shifting, not because of clouds, but because the electrical character of the sky above them is changing. Satellites in low Earth orbit have detected pulses, radio-like signals that descend from the ionosphere toward Earth's surface. These pulses follow specific frequencies, intervals, and patterns. They mimic technology, but there is no transmitter, no origin point, no human-made source. At the same time, GPS systems are failing in ways that don't align with solar interference. In certain regions, positioning errors of 10 meters or more are occurring, far outside safety margins. Planes, ships, and systems relying on precision timing are being thrown off, not by physical obstacles, but by something high above, shifting the signals they depend on. Perhaps most haunting is the timing. Earthquakes have begun to correlate with ionospheric disturbances. Seismic events are preceded by unusual electromagnetic fluctuations in the upper atmosphere. The disturbances aren't the result of quakes. They come before, as if energy is rising from the Earth into the sky, or perhaps, more unsettling, being transmitted downward. And still we don't understand. Is the ionosphere responding to forces we've overlooked? Or is it trying to balance something deeper, something stirring far below or far beyond? Is it merely reacting or initiating? What we once saw as a passive boundary now pulses with mystery. The sky is no longer just a canvas for weather. It is a participant in the planet's strange new rhythm. Perhaps the question is no longer, what is happening up there? Perhaps the question is, what is Earth becoming, and why is the sky the first to know? We are taught that gravity is constant, a silent, ever-present force, binding us to the Earth, orchestrating the movements of oceans, planets, and stars. It is the foundation upon which Newton built his laws and Einstein curved his space. Gravity doesn't change. But what if it does? Across the world, precision gravimeters have begun to whisper a different story. At first, it was subtle, minor variations in gravitational acceleration, anomalies that might be dismissed as instrument error. But soon, the patterns became too strange, too coordinated, too persistent to ignore. In places where the ground appears still, gravity is shifting. Daily, not by fractions too small to notice, but by measurable amounts that would require vast, undetected movements of mass beneath our feet. And yet, seismic networks show nothing. No tremors, no geological reconfigurations, just a gravitational pull that grows stronger or weaker with no discernible cause. Dr. Carla Breitenberg, a geophysicist at the University of Trieste, documented gravitational changes so large they exceeded instrument tolerances by factors of 10 to 50. What's more, these fluctuations were not isolated. They were synchronized. Gravimeters thousands of kilometers apart across continents recorded the same changes at the same time. Such coordination defies everything we know about local gravitational influence. Gravity is supposed to be local, dependent on nearby mass. But these anomalies act globally, as if some vast, unseen force is stretching and compressing the planet's gravitational field like a living membrane. Satellites confirm the story. The GRACE follow-on mission, designed to map Earth's gravity with extraordinary precision, has detected anomaly zones, regions where gravity appears, fluctuates, and vanishes again in cycles spanning days to weeks. These zones don't correspond with changes in terrain, ice melt, or water movement. They appear out of nowhere, and then they're gone. Even the weather is responding. Meteorologists in these gravity anomaly zones report bizarre pressure systems forming with no meteorological trigger. Temperature inversions persist for days. Wind flows in directions that make no sense relative to pressure gradients. It's as if gravity itself is reshaping the rules of the atmosphere. And time, yes, even time, is affected. Atomic clocks placed in these regions tick faster or slower than expected, as if space-time is bending more than theory predicts. Time dilation, once confined to the realm of extreme physics, is being observed here on Earth, in towns and forests and coastlines where nothing else seems unusual. Nothing except gravity. Coastal regions within these zones report tide patterns that don't match the pull of the moon or the sun. Water moves in defiance of celestial mechanics, suggesting that other gravitational influences, unaccounted for, are in play. Underground surveys show more puzzles. Density maps from borehole gravimeters reveal structures that don't align with seismic imaging. In some cases, the Earth itself seems to shift, not physically, but gravitationally. Mass appears to migrate or transform, leaving behind only anomalies that instruments record but human senses cannot detect. And through it all, a strange mathematical signature emerges. The fluctuations follow patterns, oscillations, modulations, harmonics. They resemble artificial signals more than geological processes. The gravity, it seems, is not just changing. It is oscillating, as if being tuned. If gravity can fluctuate, what else might change? And if the planet's deepest force is being rewritten, by nature or something else, what does that mean for everything built upon it? We thought gravity was a law, but perhaps it is more like a song, ancient, mysterious, and now suddenly out of tune. Thunder without clouds, lightning from an empty sky. These are not biblical omens, they are modern measurements. Across the globe, the atmosphere is coming alive in ways that defy everything we know about electricity, charge, and the basic physics of weather. Lightning has always been the visible tip of a much larger iceberg. The global electrical circuit that pulses through our skies, linking the ground, clouds, and ionosphere in a delicate, invisible balance. But something has changed. That circuit is surging with power it shouldn't have, releasing energy where no buildup should exist. Dr. Earl Williams at MIT's Lincoln Laboratory has documented lightning strikes under conditions considered physically impossible. No clouds, low humidity, no convection. These aren't fleeting sparks. Some carry energy equivalent to major thunderstorms, billions of joules discharged into dry, open air. These clear-air lightning events are increasing by 15 to 25% annually in some regions, even as precipitation declines. That's a contradiction at the heart of atmospheric physics. Without moisture, there should be no mechanism to build up charge. And yet, the strikes continue. Worse still, the signals they emit don't behave like natural lightning. Radio frequency monitoring networks have detected bursts with structured frequency patterns, regular intervals, narrow bands, repeating pulses. They look like communication signals, not random discharges. In some cases, multiple strikes have occurred simultaneously across continents, separated by thousands of kilometers, but aligned in timing to the millisecond. There is no known weather system that could coordinate such activity, and the effects don't end in the sky. At ground level, electrical currents are being recorded long after storms pass, currents of 10 to 100 amps flowing silently through the soil, as if the ground itself has become a conduit. Power grids, rail systems, and buried infrastructure are feeling the stress, quietly, unpredictably, and globally. Scientists are beginning to suspect that the electrical behavior of Earth's atmosphere is no longer solely a product of weather. It may now be entangled with changes in the upper atmosphere, or even beyond. Satellite measurements show that these atmospheric discharges often follow ionospheric disturbances, not the other way around. Energy seems to be cascading downward, pulled by unknown triggers. Chemical sampling of air during these storms reveals transformations that shouldn't be possible at current energy levels. Ozone is forming at rates far beyond what natural lightning produces. Nitrogen fixation, normally a soil process, is occurring in midair. The atmosphere is becoming a chemical reactor powered by invisible forces. And then there's the phenomenon long dismissed as folklore, ball lightning. Once considered a rare curiosity, ball lightning is now being observed more frequently, especially during these anomalous electrical storms. But this is not the erratic, vanishing flash of textbook description. These plasma spheres persist for minutes, not seconds. They move with purpose, defy wind, pass through matter, and maintain structure. They are not illusions. They are behaving like entities. Measurements of atmospheric voltage show that the entire global circuit is operating at 50 to 100% higher voltages than historical norms. It's not just more lightning. It's more energy, more potential, more tension in the skies. We used to think of storms as eruptions of chaos, temporary releases of pent-up forces. But what if they're becoming something else? A communication? A transformation? What if the sky is no longer just responding to Earth, but becoming an active participant in a deeper planetary change? And when lightning falls from an empty sky, what is it really striking? The ground, or something hidden just beneath our understanding? In the quiet hours before dawn, magnetometers stationed in remote corners of the world began to twitch, not gradually, not gently, but sharply, as if struck by some unseen force. Compass readings flipped, navigation systems faltered. And then, without warning, Earth's magnetic field reversed, locally, but completely. This was no theoretical pole shift projected to occur over millennia. It happened overnight. Dr. Monika Korte at the GFZ German Research Center documented one such event, a full 180-degree reversal of the magnetic field over an area spanning nearly 1,000 square kilometers, occurring in less than 48 hours. Similar reversals were recorded elsewhere within days, across oceans, continents apart, and yet eerily synchronized in their timing. Traditional models of geomagnetism cannot explain such rapid flips. The magnetic field, driven by molten iron currents deep within Earth's core, should move slowly, centimeters per year, not kilometers per hour. Yet these anomalies unfold with startling speed, as if some external switch had been thrown. Compasses spin. GPS remains static. The two no longer agree. Wildlife, long attuned to the planet's magnetic whispers, is suffering the consequences. Birds veer hundreds of kilometers off course during migration. Sea turtles, guided by magnetic signatures imprinted since birth, are washing ashore in unfamiliar places. Creatures that once moved in harmony with invisible lines of force now find themselves lost in a world whose poles cannot be trusted. Magnetic strength variations during these events are equally staggering. Proton precession magnetometers have recorded shifts of up to 15,000 nanotesla within hours, levels that should only be possible through planetary scale core movement. But seismic data shows no such motion. The Earth isn't trembling. Only its invisible shell is in upheaval. Even time seems confused. Archaeologists using magnetic dating techniques have encountered samples that defy chronology. Pottery, bricks, and metals with known historical origins now show magnetic orientations that don't match the geomagnetic record. It's as if the local field changed independently, temporarily rewriting history for any object caught in its reach. Satellites in orbit observe the dance from above. The Swarm constellation, tasked with mapping Earth's magnetic field, has recorded these reversals occurring simultaneously at multiple points around the globe. Their precision suggests something far more structured than chance or random geological quirks. It gets stranger. Underground electromagnetic surveys during these events reveal surges of electrical current flowing against natural patterns. Faraday's law, the foundation of electromagnetic theory, predicts that magnetic changes induce current. But here it appears reversed. The current comes first. The magnetic field follows. Geomagnetic observatories also note that these local flips generate disturbances that extend far beyond their origin zones. Ripples move upward, affecting the magnetosphere, disrupting satellite operations and radio communication, a local event with planetary echoes. Scientists once imagined pole reversals as distant, rare, and slow. But what if they're becoming faster, more frequent, even systemic? And more importantly, what if they're not originating from Earth at all? If the field can flip without warning, if the compass can betray the horizon, then we must ask, what lies beneath the surface magnetism we once trusted? Is Earth's magnetic shell being rewritten by its own chaotic core, or by a deeper interaction with forces beyond our current understanding? When north becomes south and direction dissolves, what remains to guide us home? The carbon cycle, the delicate balance of respiration, decay, absorption, and release, has long been portrayed as the quiet heartbeat of Earth's biosphere. Carbon moves through plants, oceans, and air with rhythmic precision, forming the basis of our models for climate, agriculture, and life itself. But that rhythm is no longer steady. In recent years, atmospheric CO2 levels have begun to behave erratically, spiking and plummeting in patterns that defy every known model. These are not seasonal fluctuations, nor are they explainable by emissions or vegetation cycles. They happen too quickly, sometimes within weeks, suggesting changes that should be geologically impossible. Dr. Peter Tanz from NOAA's Earth System Research Laboratory has observed atmospheric CO2 concentrations rising and falling by 15 to 40 parts per million over short periods. That's 3 to 5 times greater than annual cycles should allow. Oceans and forests, the great carbon sinks, do not operate at such speeds. Their capacity for absorption and release is slow, tied to temperature, biomass, and time. But time, it seems, is no longer the controlling factor. Instruments placed across different regions of the planet show wildly inconsistent readings. 2 towers just miles apart can record CO2 levels that differ by margins too large to be explained by wind or human activity. Soil monitors reveal carbon content changes of 20 to 50% in under a month, far beyond the capabilities of decomposition or photosynthesis. Even more troubling is the fingerprint of the carbon itself. Isotopic analysis, the tool that lets us distinguish carbon from fossil fuels versus natural sources, is revealing carbon signatures that don't match any known origin. Carbon-13 to carbon-12 ratios are skewed, suggesting sources that are either geologically unknown or chemically impossible under current biogeochemical understanding. In the oceans, the mystery deepens. Monitoring buoys show that marine CO2 concentrations are sometimes increasing even as atmospheric levels drop, violating Henry's law, the principle that governs gas exchange at the air-water interface. The ocean and sky appear to be decoupling, acting as if driven by invisible reservoirs or alternate exchanges of carbon we haven't yet identified. Meanwhile, vegetation, our most trusted carbon barometer, is behaving like an overclocked machine. Eddy covariance towers measuring plant respiration and absorption show that some ecosystems are processing carbon at rates 10 to 100 times faster than their biomass should allow. If these numbers are accurate, it would require plants to photosynthesize with an efficiency that breaks the known limits of biology. The implications are staggering. If carbon is appearing and disappearing through unknown pathways, it challenges the very foundation of our climate forecasts. The carbon budget, the balance sheet upon which mitigation strategies are built, no longer adds up. Some models suggest carbon is being created or destroyed. Others propose hidden reservoirs, perhaps deep underground or high in the atmosphere, that exchange carbon through mechanisms never observed. And then there are the nighttime fluctuations. CO2 concentrations are changing dramatically during hours when photosynthesis halts. This behavior implies non-biological processes at work, chemical, geological, or something else entirely. Something outside the cycles we've studied for decades. The cycle is breaking or revealing itself to be far more complex than we ever imagined. What happens when the gas that binds life, warms the earth, and feeds the forests begins to move by rules we don't yet know? How do we plan for a future when the past no longer offers a reliable guide? If the breath of the planet has changed its rhythm, then perhaps it is not the Earth's lungs we've misunderstood, but its very voice. And the question that now echoes in every sudden rise and fall of carbon is this: what exactly is the Earth trying to tell us? Beneath our feet, the Earth shifts, not in the slow grind of tectonic plates we've long understood, but in sudden, silent ruptures, unexpected, inexplicable. Earthquakes are no longer confined to fault lines. They are appearing in places that geological maps mark as stable, dormant, immune to disruption. Central Australia, Eastern Canada, the Midwestern United States. These are not known hotspots of seismic activity. Yet here, magnitudes above 6 are being recorded. The ground shakes where it should be still. Old bedrock fractures like brittle glass. And no one knows why. Dr. Seth Stein at Northwestern University has tracked these impossible quakes, noting that they occur in crust long believed to be immovable. These regions haven't seen active faulting in millions of years. There are no visible cracks, no pressure buildups, no subduction zones. And yet, the Earth moves. The tremors don't arrive alone. Across continents, seismic clusters are occurring within narrow time windows. Earthquakes thousands of kilometers apart, striking within 24 to 48 hours. There is no tectonic model that accounts for such synchronization. The plates, once thought to act independently, are moving in concert. But to what rhythm? Even stranger are the depths. Seismic networks are picking up quakes more than 600 kilometers below the surface, deep within the mantle, where the rock should be too hot and too soft to break. And yet the seismic waves, sharp, brittle, unambiguous, tell a different story. Something is cracking in the deep. It's not just where the quakes occur, but how. Their energy output often exceeds what the measured stress should allow. In simple terms, the Earth is releasing more force than it has stored. That violates fundamental rules of rock mechanics. The energy must be coming from somewhere, but no one knows where. Models that once predicted seismic activity with reasonable accuracy are failing. Patterns have become unpredictable. Statistical expectations, built from centuries of data, are breaking down. Forecast accuracy has dropped by more than half. The Earth is no longer cooperating, and the aftermath is just as perplexing. Aftershock sequences are behaving erratically, clusters popping up in zones untouched by the primary quake, far from where stress should have shifted. It's as if invisible forces continue to pull and push after the initial rupture, reshaping stress fields in real time. Seismic tomography, essentially X-rays of Earth's interior, is revealing structural changes in the rock itself between quakes. These aren't long-term transformations. They happen fast, weeks, days, sometimes hours. The planet's interior is not static. It is evolving, pulsing, perhaps even learning. Energy budgets for global seismic activity show something unsettling. Total earthquake energy is increasing beyond what plate motion can explain. It's as if Earth has tapped into a secondary source of energy, something beyond mere mechanical strain. And then there is the silence. Regions once prone to constant activity, Japan, California, Chile are entering unusual lulls, even as quakes erupt in new places. The quiet is not reassuring. It is eerie, as if the Earth is holding its breath. If the planet's crust is rewriting its rules, what else might follow? Are we witnessing a reconfiguration of Earth's internal systems, a planetary reset? Or are these signals, deep seismic messages from a world that is no longer content to whisper beneath the noise of civilization? When the ground moves without warning, in places we thought were safe, we are reminded of a truth more ancient than any science. The Earth is alive. And lately it has begun to speak in a new language, one of sudden silence, impossible tremors, and a rhythm all its own. Across time and science, Earth has always been considered a system of separate domains: sky, sea, crust, core. Each governed by its own laws, each changing at its own pace. But now, something strange is happening. These systems are beginning to echo one another, mirroring changes across impossible distances in patterns too synchronized to be random. We are witnessing coordination without contact. The magnetic field accelerates toward Siberia. At the same time, the ionosphere pulses with unnatural energy. Atmospheric rivers sweep across deserts, while seismic activity rises in places never known for quakes. The carbon cycle stutters. The Gulf Stream reverses. Permafrost melts in one place while freezing in another. All of it, too fast, too aligned, too exact, and perhaps the most haunting part is that the changes do not unfold independently. They seem to respond to one another, as if magnetism, heat, chemistry, and gravity were engaged in a planetary conversation. Satellite arrays observe electromagnetic pulses rising from the core just as solar storms strike the upper atmosphere. Within days, the oceans shift, animals migrate off course, and lightning flashes in clear skies. The signal moves downward, upward, then outward, never in isolation. Climate models once assumed independence between systems. Carbon didn't affect seismic activity. Magnetism had nothing to do with rain. But that firewall is gone. The walls between domains are crumbling. Researchers tracking these anomalies have begun layering the data, mapping time against space, cause against effect. The results defy discipline. A magnetic jerk in the Arctic precedes atmospheric reversals over the Sahara. A gravity anomaly off the coast of South America aligns with a heat pulse in the deep Pacific. No model accounts for this. No theory even suggests the possibility. And yet it is happening. This isn't the chaos of collapse. It's the choreography of change. Some scientists propose that we're not witnessing isolated anomalies at all, but a system-wide reorganization. A transformation not of temperature or pressure, but of the very framework through which Earth operates. A planetary phase shift. But into what? Is Earth adapting to something we have yet to measure? Responding to forces beyond the solar wind and tectonic drift? Could it be reacting to internal thresholds, an invisible tipping point crossed quietly decades ago? The pace is accelerating. Events that once occurred over millennia are now happening within months. Each anomaly fuels the next, not in a linear cascade, but in a networked surge, like neurons firing in a brain we never knew Earth possessed. For the first time, environmental science is forced to consider not just what is changing, but how everything may be changing. Together, the implications are staggering. If climate, geology, biology, magnetism, and atmospheric electricity are intertwined, then we must rewrite the map of understanding itself, not as a list of disciplines, but as a unified field of planetary behavior. And in that field, we must ask, what is the message? Is this a warning, a transition, a long-forgotten process now stirring again? Or have we always lived in a world capable of such change, and only now are we beginning to hear it? Earth is no longer simply warming, shifting, or storming. It is awakening. And in that awakening, the boundaries between systems dissolve, revealing a world more alive, more connected, and far more mysterious than science has ever dared to admit. It starts with a soundless whisper, one too slow for human ears, too vast for a single sensor. Yet across the planet, from the molten core to the ion-charged sky, the Earth is resonating. And as we piece together the signals, magnetic surges, gravitational oscillations, atmospheric anomalies, we begin to see the outline of something larger, not a breakdown, but a transformation. Every anomaly we've explored, from the magnetic pole's sprint to the Gulf Stream's reversal, from lightning in cloudless skies to carbon fluctuations without cause, points toward a singular truth. Our models of Earth, while once comforting, are incomplete. Nature is not misbehaving. We have simply misunderstood the scale and speed at which it can change. The implications ripple through science like an aftershock. For climatology, it means weather is no longer a closed system of wind, water, and heat, but one influenced by magnetism, ionospheric dynamics, and deep Earth signals. For geology, it means tectonics alone cannot explain seismic patterns. For biology, it means life is navigating a planet whose guiding forces are shifting beneath its feet, and wings and fins. What's more, the coordination of these changes suggests something even more profound. Earth may not be a system of separate parts, but an integrated, living whole. A planetary intelligence, not conscious perhaps, but deeply complex, capable of sudden shifts in form and function, responding to stimuli we do not yet perceive. We've seen this pattern before, in biology. A caterpillar doesn't just grow wings, it reorganizes at the cellular level, becoming something new. Is Earth undergoing something similar? A metamorphosis at the scale of a planet? Some voices warn of disaster, of doom cloaked in natural signs. But to interpret this moment purely as collapse is to ignore the possibility that we are not witnessing the end, but a beginning that demands humility. Humility to accept that we do not know all the forces at play. Humility to recognize that life, ours and Earth's, is nested within patterns far more ancient than our sciences. Patterns that include feedback loops we have yet to name, energies we cannot yet trace. And in this humility, we must also find courage. Courage to listen more closely to the planet's subtle language, to build models that allow for uncertainty, to ask better questions, not just about carbon or currents or quakes, but about how everything connects. Because if the anomalies are signals of a larger shift, then we stand at a threshold, not of despair but of deeper understanding. Perhaps Earth is not failing us. Perhaps it is inviting us to grow, to evolve our perception, to remember that the planet beneath us is not a backdrop, but a protagonist in its own right, capable of transformation, mystery, and story. And as we look forward, we must decide, will we cling to old frameworks that no longer explain the world we live in? Or will we step into the unknown, with open eyes and open minds, prepared to witness a planet becoming something new? The choice may define not just our future, but our relationship with the only home we've ever known. Because Earth is not just changing, it is revealing itself, and in that revelation lies the greatest discovery of all, that we too are part of the mystery. The world is not as it was. This truth has echoed across deserts drenched by impossible rain, oceans that defy direction, skies charged with lightning born of silence. We've walked through forests above shifting faults, floated in magnetic fields that no longer point true north, and stood stunned as the invisible frameworks of gravity and time warped beneath our instruments. And now, we gather these fragments not as puzzles to be solved with quick conclusions, but as pieces of a story still unfolding. A story not about catastrophe, but about complexity. Not collapse, but connection. For centuries, science has offered us tools to measure, predict, and understand. But what we are seeing now, these 10 anomalies and the unspoken ones to come, reminds us that knowledge is not a finish line. It is a living process. The more we learn, the more we must admit what we do not know. The Earth, it seems, is far stranger, more fluid, and more alive than our models have allowed. Its magnetic fields shift like restless thoughts. Its atmosphere dances to tunes no one remembers composing. Its deep oceans pulse with changes that reach the sky. Gravity bends in ways that hint at structure, not chaos. Carbon, once the steady breath of life, now moves like a whisper from an unknown source. And above all, these changes happen not alone, but together. Coordinated, synchronized. As if Earth's many systems, once viewed as separate instruments, are playing a new kind of music. One we haven't learned to hear in full. Maybe that's the real revelation, that we've mistaken the silence of the Earth for stillness and its complexity for contradiction. We've built our understanding atop assumptions of stability, separation, and slow change. But what if Earth has always been dynamic, unified, and capable of abrupt transformation? What if this isn't deviation, but design? In every field, from geology to climate science, new theories are being quietly born, whispered in data sets, shared in late-night conferences, wondered about in silence by those who spend their lives listening to the planet. And at the heart of them all is a shared feeling, awe. Not fear, not fantasy, but awe. Awe that the Earth is not merely reacting to us, but evolving alongside us. Awe that we may be witnessing a shift not just in weather or magnetism, but in our place within a planetary system still unfolding its secrets. And so we arrive not at an answer, but at a question. What if the anomalies are not errors but invitations? Invitations to listen more deeply, to live more humbly, to remember that we are not passengers on a dead rock, but participants in a living world. In the end, Earth remains, as it always has, mysterious, intelligent, in ways we've yet to define, and capable of transformation far beyond our current understanding. We are not outside of that transformation. We are within it. And perhaps that's the most profound truth of all, that the story of Earth's anomalies is not just about the planet changing, but about us, learning to change with it. The question now is not what is happening. It is, how will we choose to see?